frozen. There we go. Now it's recording.
Okay, so let's start. So welcome everybody to this fifth parallel session brought to you by the European Climate and Energy Modeling Platform 2022. So this session will be focused on consumer behavior and interventions. As you already know, the research on individual human behavior has become a relevant topic since it allows us to better understand the decision-making process of households when it comes to investments, such as whether to adopt an electric vehicle or not, whether to improve the energy efficiency of the home or not, and so on. In addition, a better knowledge of individual behavior is, I would say, crucial for analyzing the consumption of energy or how the general reaction to different policies and policy tools will be. Therefore, in this session, we will explore potential pathways for long energy demand and how these pathways can be rationalized from an individual basis. Moreover, we will examine potential societal turning points that affect demand patterns and policy perceptions. So regarding the structure and timing of these sessions, speakers will have 15 minutes to show their presentations, okay? Please try to stick to the time available or I will have to give you a warning if you exceed that time. And believe me that you don't want that, okay? So after a presentation, there will be 10 minutes of time for the speaker to answer questions from the audience. These questions can be asked via the Be Too Much chat box that you all have visible on the right while the speaker is speaking, or it can be also done orally during the question time slot, okay? At the end of all the presentations, we will have another 10-minute slot for questions and conclusions. And okay, so without further delay, let's start with the first of the speakers. He's Cruz Borges from the University of Deusto in Bilbao, Spain. And his presentation is about nudge-based interventions to promote energy conservation and demand response among customers of an electricity retailer following the change of the electricity tariff in Spain. So Cruz, welcome. I give you the floor.
Thank you, Carlos. I hope that you can see.
Yes, we can see everything perfectly and we can hear you perfectly.
I am hearing someone in the background.
Yes, we are hearing someone. Please, Shailene, you, I think that...
Okay. So thank you, Carlos, for the introduction. I'm Cruz Borges. I'm a researcher from the University of Deusto. This is a joint work with several other researchers from the University of Deusto and also with people from Goyener, that is an energy retailer from the north of Spain. Yeah. The idea for today is that in this presentation, I wanted to try to contextualize the intervention that we have carried out, trying to explain the details and also summarize the main results. Yeah, without further delay, because I have not too many time. The Spanish electricity system is fully deregulated energy system, but it's controlled by 5 big utilities that control almost 90% of the market. The main problem is that the population also those are not the biggest sympathized by the population. Yeah, they have several problems every time that something is changing to the energy system. So in Spain, the energy tariff is divided in 3, let's say, fields. First one is the network charge to fund the DSO and TSO. Then we have some taxes that are controlled by those two are controlled by the government, and then we have the energy fee that is controlled by the energy retailer. Okay. Almost 1 year and a half. Well, the tariff is more or less calculated between the power contracted and the amount of energy that you have consumed. Yeah, the network charge and the taxes are based on both components, but the energy cost is only based on the amount of energy that you have consumed. So a couple of 1 year ago, the government have changed the tariff structure that we have until now, until that moment, because they wanted to, let's say, foster behavioral change, trying to unify of course only one tariff, and then trying to rebalance the amount of money that is charged for the fixed charge and the variable charge, let's say. And also trying to, let's say, be more easy the introduction of electric panels and the electric vehicle, and also trying to foster somehow some demand response to align the consumption with the non-peak hours of the energy system in Spain. So yeah, the main issue is that there was a really bad communication campaign by the government that provoke a very an answer, not a very strong population, but population protest, because they thought that the government was trying to get more money from this tariff. But the initial results were quite good. I mean, the overall results, I mean, from the entire population, I mean, it was a strong movement of charge, of loads in the key moments. But the long-term evaluation, it's completely masked by the lot of things that have happened in the last year, okay? But in this session, what we are going to try to assess is what has happened for an energy retailer, and trying to take a closer look, not in the overall picture, okay, but a closer look of individually what type of person has been affected more or less by the change of the energy tariff, okay? So the intervention. Goyener is a small energy retailer in the north of Spain. They have around 60 workers, more than 15,000 cooperatives, and around 20,000 contracts. It's basically a reseller of electricity from 100% renewable origin. What they do is that, I mean, the tariff is, what the government changed was what we call the taxes and the fees for the DSO and the TSO. This was the change, but the energy part was controlled by the energy retailer, and the government has not touched that one. But what the Goyener was to completely align what the, let's say, the tariff structure that was fixed by the government, replicated into the energy structure. So what we have in the end, we have 3 energy periods, and 2 power periods. So you can have 2 different powers contracted. So and you have 3 energy prices, let's say. So the idea is that you try to avoid consuming energy in the red hours, let's say, and move to the green, to the yellow, to the green ones. Okay. This is the kind of idea. So what we have done, seeing what was happening with bad press and this kind of thing, we create, we help Goyener to create intervention in order to try to foster the alignment of the people with the change of the tariff, to foster the participation. So what we wanted to do is, what we create is a randomized control trial, trying to assess, what people are going to be most affected by the let's say, the change of the tariff, trying to reduce the energy consumption in general, and also to move from peak demand to off-peak demand. The most important point is that seeing if we can find any potential group of people that could be highly affected by the change of the tariff. So, for example, people that cannot change their behavior for different reasons, they are going to be charged almost double the price. So we wanted to try to spot who will be those ones, and trying to understand if corrective measures have to be put into place. So what we have done, we sent a communication campaign to all the people into the census of the consumers of the Goyener. of Goyener Energy Retailer. And we send by email some information at the start of before the change of the tariff. And then every month, we send 1 or 2 emails with tips in order to foster change of the behavioral change. And there is one control group where we only send information about the new tariff structure and the reasons that they are for what they are being done. But then each one of the experimental groups get a different set, a reinforce of this information, where we send economic related tips or economic related informations. Another one that get environmental information, let's say, and the last one is energy efficient, where we try to those groups to try to reduce the energy consumption. Okay, we send these informations during 6 months, and we have assessed 1 year entirely. Okay, this was done between June 21 and December 21. So we're out of COVID issues, let's say, but later on we are going to explain that when we compare with the previous periods, we are going to have some problems because we get into the middle of the lockdowns. Okay, so the results. First, we have information from the entire panel of people. I mean, we have load curve, individual load curve for 22,000, more than almost 23,000 persons. But we have sent at the end of the action an anonymized survey when we retrieve information from 700. And then for 300 persons, we have de-anonymized the survey. So we have information, actual information of their behavior, the behavior, the electrical behavior, let's say, with the very large socioeconomic description and information about their behavior, I mean, or what they have sold into this survey. Okay, please take into consideration that while this is a census, so we have all the information, this is not a random sample. I mean, this is voluntary sample, so we have some bias. We could have some bias here. Okay, the conclusions, and I think that I'm going too fast. No, not too fast. So the conclusion is that the participation and attrition rate were comparable to the ones in the literature. We have more or less a 30% of attrition. Answering of reading the information that we have sent. I mean, more or less 60% of the person have opened the emails, and around 40% of the people actually read and spend more than 1 minute reading the information that we have sent. So it was quite good. 60% of the participants does not consider the new tariff as a good measure. Okay, so people continue to not thinking that this was a very good activity, but 70% of the people currently understand the objective. The main issue is that they don't agree with them. They say that they don't think it's going to work out. But 80% of the participants follow the tips. I mean, they say that they follow the tips, and later on we are going to see how much change of behavior we have found. Okay, 76% of the people say that they have changed the time of. I mean, the action that has been carried out more frequently is the time of use of the washing machine and the dishwasher, and 60% of the people also modify the use of other appliances. Okay. The ironing, the vacuum power. I mean, this is not we don't have more information about that one. Not surprisingly, the most cited barriers were the personal and family schedules, and this was like more than 30%. And surprisingly, 30% say that they don't have any barrier at all. Okay, so what we have see, I mean, this part is based on the survey, but this part is based on the 23,000 people that we have solved. Okay, so there has been a 5% reduction in the overall energy consumption when we compare with 2019. Okay, the key problem is that if we compare with the 2020, let's say, we are in the middle of the lockdowns. And when we compare the behavior of the people before the lockdowns and during the lockdowns and after the lockdowns, it doesn't make sense. I mean, we are seeing, I mean, differences are very huge, and the consumption are not very well aligned, and this kind of thing. So we decide, after discussing the thing with several stakeholders, that it is better. I mean, it's better to have as a comparison 2019 instead of 2020, and this, I think that this is going to happen a lot, very frequently from now. Okay. So 5% reduction in the total energy consumption, and then what we have saw is that in the peak hours we have seen a 3% reduction. Okay, in the valley it was negligible, let's say, but it was a small increase in the energy consumption in the valley. Okay, so these 5 overall reductions is translating in a 3% reduction in the peak and a slight increase in the valley energy consumption. Okay. So when we see this kind of figures in segment by segment, I mean, we split the population in quite a lot of different segments. What we have seen is that the transfer from peak to non-peak hours, it was completely different between different segments. So it was the amount of people that have increase in the peak to non-peak hours were people in the lowest economic and educational strata. Okay, but there was some differences, and youngster and people household with only means. I mean, this is incorrect. I mean, this is the ones that have not transferred from peak to non-peak hours. Are the lowest economic and educational strata, the lowest knowledge about energy transition, the youngster and the household with only means have also don't change the behavior. I mean, this is almost the same consumption, let's say. And the ones that are not very active, doing action very active in favor of the environment. And the people that don't own the homes, and also the people that live in flats and do not live in cities. I mean, those are the ones that have not changed their behavior too much. I mean, yeah, I think that this is, I can finish here.
Okay, perfect. I mean, you have been in time, so that's great. So let's see if there's some question in the chat. In the chat, I don't find any question. I don't know if any of the attendants to this session wants to do a question orally. Probably Leila, is she raising her hand?
Yes, if I am allowed. Okay. Thank you so much for your great presentation. I think this is a very important and and it shows a very vast study. I have 2 questions. One is mostly clarification, and the other one actually is just a comment. The first one is regarding to changing the basically consumption from the peak to non-peak actually hours. I was wondering what was you said that you sent an email around to bring the information to the households and how they can do that. I was wondering, just give me one example what you did it, because personally I'm just thinking this is really depends on the schedule of the household, as also you mentioned that this is a barrier of the as a barrier that if they cannot change their time of their consumption. But first, I want to know what type of this information that you provide for them. And then the second is that, for example, did you also check that how technology innovations like a smart kind of appliances that you can schedule them that could influence on that? And then my last comment is that I'm also very much curious to see that you found that there is these patterns you didn't find that in low income families, because my just feeling is that the people that are basically they have a lack of income, so basically they would prefer to change something to save the money. So this is very interesting for me to see that this didn't change actually in a low income people. So that's it.
Let's start with the last. Let's start with the last one. I mean, what they don't change was the behavior from peak to non-peak. If you see this strata, what they have happened is that they have highly reduced the energy consumption on peak hours, and nothing more. So they don't move things, they just reduce their energy consumption. So this is one of the biggest ones that are in the 5% of the energy consumption, let's say. Please be aware that the sample from Goyener is highly biased. We have a very small sample on this strata because the people that go to Goyener, I mean, they have a barrier of entry that they have to pay a fee to enter into the cooperative. So this is highly biased. So this is the first one. The second one is that, I mean, I have some examples, but I mean, we have sent some text, and what we have put into the text was trying to convince people to move charge. And we say, okay, for example, please be aware that if you put the washing machine at 12 o'clock in the night, you are going to save 20 or 40 euros a year.
Okay, so it's kind of information, providing information about that, how it thinks. And then did you also provide information on a technological innovation like a smart appliances or not? Okay.
No.
Yeah,
we don't know. I think that we asked in the survey about this kind. I mean, if you have this kind of appliance, nothing. I mean, this was. I mean, the type of answer was quite normal, let's say. So people don't have any smart appliance. I mean, in the sample that we have, let's say.
Perfect. It's clear. So, I definitely will contact you after this call. I would love to give the opportunity to others as well to ask a question. Thanks a lot. Amazing work.
I think that the most important picture for you is this one. I mean, what they have said is that they have changed the washing machine and the dishwasher. I mean, almost everyone has changed the behavior on that. And they have also used change of their appliance. And this is really important, the eco function here also. And also, I mean, reduce the energy use. But I mean, this is the kind of numbers that you can get with these behaviors, but not change the time they have the meal or this kind of thing that have the biggest impact, or the thermostat or this kind of thing.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay, so thank you, Leila, for your question. We have just received another question in the chat. I mean, I think that it's because, I mean, Cruz, you have said that you have not been working with random samples because, I mean, the sample may be a bit biased. So we have a question about Suran Chatterjee, who is asking, who are those respondents of the survey? So are they the users of demand mobile applications, such as demand management applications for load management?
No, they are the customers of the energy retailer. At the moment, they don't have any demand response app, let's say, but they have recently, I mean, they have another change of tariff in Spain a couple of months ago. Now we have a fully dynamic price. Every hour of the day is a different price. Everyone has this kind of tariff. I mean, you cannot avoid this now. Before you can avoid them, but now you cannot avoid it. And they have implemented this kind of dynamic management app. And yeah, we are going to redo this kind of assessment with this in a couple of months in order to see if they have changed or if they are managing to change the behavior. Here, there is going to be a problem because now that the time, I mean, the hours that are peak time and non-peak time every day are different, and it's going to be trickier to assess. But yes, this is the kind of point. And about the socioeconomic strata, as I was saying to Laila, we have a small bias towards middle upper class, let's say middle upper class. I mean, we have a lot of university students with low level of unemployment, medium to high salaries, let's say. And in fact, they have a strong bias selection because if they found that someone inside the cooperative is in risk of poverty or are in the lower strata, they cannot. The cooperative cannot offer to this client a cheaper tariff because, I mean, the Spanish government have a special fixed tariff, but the cooperative cannot offer that. So they just help them to ask for this new and special tariff that the Spanish government give to people in that strata. And one of the questions that they wanted to know is trying to find this, if they are doing something to those people that are in this situation in order to trying to create other corrective measures. I mean, if they can, obviously.
Okay, thank you for the answer. I think there's another question from Naut. I mean, since you are here, Naut, would you be so kind as to ask the question directly to the speaker?
Yes, of course. And thank you. It was a very nice presentation and very interesting results as well. I was specifically thinking about electric vehicles because I think they have a lot of potential for demand response or smart charging or anything like that. Did you have any people with electric vehicles in this study?
That we know, no.
Okay.
The key point is that I mean the tariff allows you to put two powers, to contract two powers, one during the day, let's say, and a different one, bigger one, much bigger. You can change your power even 10 times during nights with the same price, more or less. We have put one question, specific question is, do you know that this exists? Do you know that you can put your electric charger in this kind of situation? Nobody answered. So, I mean, this is a facility that is in the tariff structure that, as far as we know, nobody has used it. And if you are not using it, it's probably because you don't have an electric car. Or you have an electric car, but not charged at home, let's say.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay,
I think that, thank you very much, Naut. I think that we have time for a short answer, okay? Just be fast. I mean, this is a question in the chat. How much these nudges are effective in reduction from high income strata? Because I mean, they say that
the nudge, I mean, when we assess the nudge individually versus the control, we don't see anything. I mean, the differences was not due to the nudge. I mean, this is what we have found after the randomized control trial. Okay, I mean, the change of I mean, from peak to non-peak. What we don't know is how much they have been helping to reduce the energy consumption. But at least in the movement from peak to non-peak, they don't have help. And unfortunately, I have not done the let's say the two strata combined, so I have not assessed for high income, and in each one of the strata, I don't have making this assessment. I mean, because I mean this is an interesting question, and I mean the data is going to be provided in an open access in a couple of weeks. When we finish merging something that was not merged together. So I invite all of you to download it and to use it and to improve the assessment that we have done. So.
Okay, nice suggestion, Cruz. Thank you very much for your presentation. So I think that it's time for advance. So the second speaker would be Diego Casado from the University of Deusto with the presentation, what are the most relevant factors that affect households' investment decisions on the energy transition? But if I'm not wrong, he's not here. So Cruz Borges, again, will be the presenter of this presentation. So are you ready for the second presentation, Cruz?
Let me take a little bit of water.
Okay, drink a bit of water. So you can start whenever you want. So the floor is yours again.
Thank you, Carlos. So it's me again. Carlos has a last-minute flight that they have to take it, so he's not here. But yeah, I will make the presentation from him. So the objective for this presentation is to try to present the results of research that we have done, trying to understand the behavior of people around the investment decision. So it is known that now, I mean, the energy transition, I mean, there is like two huge parts. I mean, this is a part that is going to be done by the energy producer, let's say, in the spot market, let's say, the people that go traditional go to the spot market, but this is also half of the problem is also in the sellers of the household, okay? But until now, everyone has been assumed that the behavior of people in, let's say, it's that they follow what they call the ressourcement, that is going to take decisions based on the information that they have, let's say. But if you ask the psychologists, they say, okay, come on, this is not the reality. I mean, this is not how people actually behave. I mean, they say that they behave that way, but the reality is that they don't behave that way. I mean, and the perfect counter example is that we have news. I mean, we have advertise, and the advertise continue to work, and the advertise they don't try to sell you the product saying that how good it is. It's trying to do other things. Okay. So the idea is that the investment decision toward energy transition are not going to be different. So we need to understand what are the reasons for people to behave in this aspect. Okay. So what we are going to try to do here is try to explain the methodology that we have followed in order to capture this kind of reasons, and then try to present the main result that we have achieved so far. This is a very work in progress, let's say. So what I'm going to present you is a teaser of the main results. Okay, so the methodology. We have assembled a very long and complex methodology in 4 steps that I'm going to try to summarize the 4 of them into this presentation. So first, we do a Delphi method in order to try to define 4 different scenarios. Well, four different aspects, and for each one of the aspects, 5 scenarios. Okay, each aspect is related to one, let's say, component of the energy transition. So, for example, we have an aspect that is the building, and not related to the building insulation, heating, and these kind of things. Then we have another one for everyday appliance, like smart meters, change of behavior around the buying energy efficiency appliance, and these kind of things. Another one to flexibility, namely more or less PV panels and batteries, let's say. And another one, the last one, is mobility, focused on the new mobility paradigms that are running now at the moment. Okay, so in this stage, we create the different scenarios, set up a panel of experts, and prepare and run the Delphi method. So, for example, one of the examples of the scenario that we build are these 5, and then we have a base one that is, for example, the fossil fuel. I mean, the actual status quo, let's say. Then we have a minimum one that is more or less what we thought that this was the cheapest way to achieve some impact, let's say. And for example, in this one, we saw that the best one was electric vehicle, and it was just a change in that everyone changed to electric vehicle and nothing more changed. Okay, this normally have a negative impact, let's say, in the sense that it was okay, is okay-ish. Okay, then we have a probable, that is something that is what we expect to happen. Let's say that this is a public transport, is in the public transport, and this kind of things. And then we have a plausible that is going to be a little bit better, but more futuristic. That is, for example, robotaxis taking everything and it's improving the mobility. Okay, and then we have an ideal that in this case, for example, is 15-minute cities. And in this case, it's completely orthogonal, and we have a very good solution that don't need transport at all. Okay. In other aspects, we have similar scenarios. Let's say the transport one is probably the most clear one. Then we sent a template where we are going to retrieve intrinsic and extrinsic determinants to make investment decision in each one of the scenarios, let's say. And then we ask about barriers and rebound effects. Okay. And the results. We build a panel for each one of the aspects. We aiming to have between 7 and 10 people in each one of the panel, and we have in one we have even more than we had expected. We trying to involve people from different fields: psychology, public authorities, technology. I mean, technology developers. Public authorities, economic fields, let's say. We have also in trying to keep a balanced international panel. I mean, also gender balance. I mean, the gender balance was the ones that we have not been able to fulfill it completely. But I mean, the rest of the objectives, we were more or less successful. We have 1,233 results in each in total, and more or less we have a very good distribution between the different aspects and the different scenarios. Okay, so the second stage is after we have this huge amount of answer. The answer was free text, so we have long phrases. We have to code in that into something that will be machine readable and human understandable, let's say. So what we thought is that we wanted to follow a pairing coding. Let's say 2 persons make the coding independently, and then we have a third one that usually is one of the other 2 to solve the potential mismatch between the 2. Okay. So at the end, what we found is that we use an existing theoretical framework to generate the codes. It was the planet behavioral theory, if I remember correctly. And then with all the codes, we create some sort of a taxonomy, and we align each one of the codes with different categories and create some sort of hierarchy with all the results. Okay, so the results. We have a 2-level hierarchy when we have the 8 psychosocial needs plus a financial category, because we have so many financial related answers that we need to create a new category there. And then we have 32 individual determinants codes. Okay, and this is the taxonomy, taxonomy, when we have here codes, factors or determinants that are related to the autonomy, the physicalness, the relatedness, the popularity, the meaning, the security, the competence and the stimulation, and also the financial related aspect. Okay. Then, when we see the agreement, let's say, between the expert in each aspect, let's say, what we see is that the flexibility and the appliance more or less follow the same structure, but for building the mobility, the structure is different, okay? But more important is that the total ones is that the competence, I mean, aspects related to competence are more seated than the financial and relatedness. This is really important because these 2 are the 3 more important, but normally, what we have seen is that the literature only focuses on the financial determinants, okay? So this is something that we need to take into consideration and something that we need that is really important for making policy, okay? And now what we are doing now at the moment is that we are going to try to say, okay, well, this is the kind of vocabulary that we are going to use. But what we know and what we wanted to follow up is that we know that every person is different. What we wanted to know is the persons trying to cluster themselves and can create some archetypes. And we say, okay, there is going to be different archetypes. Okay. So in order to create these archetypes, what we are going to do is to follow another different psychological theory, that is the state of change, the trans-theoretical model, that is based on different stages. And they say that before taking a decision, you are transition between all the stages. So you start with a contemplation phase that you are not aware, then you start being aware of the problem, and then you prepare to take an action, then you take the action, and then you maintenance the action, okay? And what we wanted to know is there is different archetypes behave differently or similar in each stages, okay? But the main problem is that we don't know how many investment behavior really are and what are their characteristics, okay? So in order to do that, what we have shown is to do a cross-sectoral survey in order to create these archetypes, okay? And then we are going to, the first plan was to try to do a longitudinal survey, trying to catch each one of the archetypes, making the investment decision, okay? Or trying to categorize each one of the archetypes in each one of the stages. Main problem is that we are going to have enough time in the project to capture this correctly. So what we have thought is that we are going to change the longitudinal assessment with a panel of experts that are going to do a similar action of the Delphi method that we have saw at the first, in order to trying to assess what are the determinants are more related with each state of the change. Okay, and then we are going to try to change this longitudinal panel survey to a Telegram bot, where we are going to try to create some sort of a role play, when we are going to try to people to simulate different investment decisions and see how they behave. Okay, so we are currently running the conceptual survey, and it will be, I mean, it will be very helpful if you share the survey, because we wanted to have a large sample between the entire Europe. So it will be, if you can help, it will be welcome. The idea is that we wanted to have we wanted to achieve a prioritization of the scenarios. We wanted to assess the existence of this cluster, I mean, creating the archetypes. And we wanted to also assess the investment decision, I mean, trying to put numbers to the investment decision that they wanted to perform, and also having a psychological and socioeconomic profile in order to see if different strata have different, are more related to the different cluster, and see if we can make a predictive model from the socioeconomic to the cluster and these kind of things. So results so far. I mean, the 15-minute city seems to be the most preferable scenario by far, and followed by the flexibility markets. Okay, the insulation and appliance are not so preferable between the population. Okay, the amount that is willing to invest if they have money. I mean, the question was something like, you have inherited a large sum of money. How many will you be willing to invest in each one of the scenarios or renovation? And the mean investment is like 50,000 euros. Okay. If you provide an interest-free credit, they are willing to invest between 20 and 50% more. So, I mean, interest-free credits are a good action. I mean, a good opportunity for people to do things. Okay. But when we ask about direct investment decision, I mean, about the insulation, PV generation, and batteries, and these kind of things, they will not doing that until they reduce the price around between 50 and 70%. They have to reduce the energy, the cost at least between 50 and 70%. Okay, but in appliance and in electric vehicles, the cost reduction that they expect in order to start investing is between 40 and 45. Okay. Nevertheless, for example, for energy efficient appliance, 70% of the people that say that with actual prices they are good to go. Okay. So this is the result for the people that don't do, they will not do with the actual prices. Okay. And the results so far indicate that there is going to be 9 behavioral clusters, but we don't know what are going to be inside each one of them. But yeah, this is an improvement, because so far the state of the art, they trying to create only one behavioral profile for everyone. And we know that this is doesn't seem right, let's say. And that's it. I'm not sure if we are late, Carlos.
No, we are not late. We are okay, just in time. So thank you very much for your presentation. I think that it has been clear. So let's wait for people if they want to ask any questions. If not, I mean, I'm interested, because I mean, you have said that you have used the Delphi method, that if I haven't understood it properly, it's a method for arrive to an opinion or to a decision from surveying a panel of experts, isn't it? And those experts respond to several rounds of questionnaires and things like this, no? So I was wondering about the composition of this panel of experts. Can you can you tell us a bit about what was the composition of this panel of experts? I mean, or if you had problems for contacting them or whatever.
Huge problem. Yeah, we assembled a panel of experts between, it was almost 40 people. We tried to have experts from ethics, I mean, expert on ethics, expert on psychology or sociology, let's say, expert from economic background, And then we have a panel of engineers, people that are doing technology, people that are managing in public authorities, managing funds. Okay, this kind of people. We have a mix between academia, public authorities, and also from companies, from industry. More or less, we have also a panel from different countries. I mean, we have people from south of Europe, from north of Europe, and also from east. So the panel was this kind of thing. So we have expert with, I mean, high HP impact from people from the industry. I mean, yeah, it was
very
good.
cross-sectorial.
Yes.
I see.
It was a pain in the ass to coordinate everyone. It was during summer. I mean, so people they have their holidays and this kind of thing. We were also in holidays sometime. I mean, it was a difficult process, but what? I mean, at the end, we have a success. We need to do a second round because, for example, for mobility, we don't have enough answer from the first round. So we need to do twice. I mean, asking for more people after we end because we don't have enough people. But well, in the end, we finished.
Perfect, clear. So
there is one question in the chat.
Yes, there's a question in the chat. Is again Suran Chatterjee, who is asking if the results are already published or if they are available somewhere in the form of report, of deliverable, or something like this.
No, the report that we have published is only the methodology. They don't have any. I think that they only have the results until here. I think that they end here. And from this in advance, this is just something that is being doing now at the moment. I mean, the survey is running. I mean, we have not finishing. We have only half of the sample that we wanted to get. And in the 20th of October, 20th of this month, we are going to have this panel of experts. So you have a teaser of what they are going to be the results. I mean, these results has been taken. I mean, I have some taken yesterday. I have downloaded the answer from the survey that we have and run the assessment. And this is what we get. I mean, when we finish with the entire sample, this could change. I mean, it has been quite. I have been taking already different snapshots, and it's quite stable at the moment. So most probably we are not going to have huge differences here. I mean, the first part. I don't know what is going to happen with the night behavioral cluster because this is the one that are going to be more noisy. But yeah.
Okay.
We are going to publish again, as before, when we have all the answers, we are going to publish the results not only in a paper, in a deliverable, but also going to open the access to the data in order to foster that other people make other assessment.
Okay, so we expect those results to be published soon, Cruz. Okay, so is there any other question? Because I mean, I think in the chat there's no question. I don't know if anyone in the audience wants to ask an oral question. Probably not.
Yes, can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I think this is super interesting research. Also, for me, the non-rationality in household decision making of renewable energy technologies is a quite difficult process to grasp in my models. So I'm really interested to learn more about that, and I'm a bit interested in the method you use because in the end you ask experts about how they think households would invest in these renewable energy technologies, right? Not households themselves.
No. This survey is to households. So
the households answered it, and and the experts did the
expert do this.
Oh yeah, okay, then I understand.
But with this, I mean, we have gone to the households and saying, okay, how do you behave in these terms? So what we have is now, we have what we plan to do is to try to make a map between this and investment decision. We have put some, I mean, how much will you invest in solar panel? This amount. How much will you invest? Blah, blah. And what we wanted to try to do now is trying to correlate those and trying to create archetypes and saying, okay,
Yes.
For solar panels, people, I don't know, I'm inventing things. People are the most important determinant for people to put a solar panel is how fun they are going to be with this technology. Okay, so the next step is, okay, we need to foster that. Trying to make people aware how fun they are going to be if they put a solar panel in their house. I don't know, I mean, I'm inventing the thing.
In that case, I'm really interested in your results.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think that it's time to go on and start with the third speaker today. She's Leila Niamir. She comes from the International Institute for Applied System Analysis, that, if I'm not wrong, it's in the city of Luxembourg in Austria, isn't it? And her presentation is about social and technological innovation pathways for long energy demand. So, Leila, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and I hope that you are seeing the right side of my slides as a full screen.
Yes, you are.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I try to also time myself, but feel free to alert me if I'm going far away. Okay. Actually, it's difficult not to say because we heard two very exciting empirical studies and two great cases. Here, I really want to mostly has a fundamental kind of concept. This is a work that I did with my colleague in the US. Is based on a project that we have here at YASA as a energy demand. So here we are going to focus on how we can bring the innovation in low energy demand. I will start in that way that we have a very, very short window to cut our emission to reach to our goal. I mean, the latest assessment of IPCC shows that if we want to reach 1.5 degree or 2 degrees Celsius, we should reach to the peak before 2025. It means that literally in less than 3 years. So this is really important that we do the immediate action. And this is something that mostly covered in literature by a supply side, and all the focus was on the supply side and the supply side strategy, renewable energy, and etc. And less attention was on the demand side. So as a first time at the IPCC, in the last assessment report, we had a dedicated chapter on the demand side, which we looked through that what are actually the demand side mitigation strategy that can cut off the greenhouse gas emission by 2050. And we categorize that in 3 main categories: as a sociocultural factor, infrastructure design and use, and end-use technology adoption. As you can see in these colors bars, that shows that if we say that the gray, light gray bar is basically the baseline scenario, or what we are predicting in 2020, in 2050, with these strategies of the demand side, we have had a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and the estimation shows that this is something between 40 to 70%. So it's a huge amount of the potential that we have in demand side. But the question here is that how we can basically accelerate that. I mean, what type of strategy that we can bring that scale up this kind of strategy that I mentioned in here in the previous slides, that there's lots of strategies, and I'm not going to read that, but how we can scale it up and how we can accelerate the adaptation of this type of strategy, because these are very impactful. Here is basically the concept of the innovation will come, and then the first time the LED, or LED is abbreviation of the low energy demand, technological and social innovation. The first time is came through the my colleague here, Grubner 2018, a paper on in a Nature Energy, that they talk about the narratives and then the innovations in a low energy demand. They talked about that there is 5 key drivers that like a higher living standards, urbanization, digitalization, novel services, and prosumers. But when we look to the innovation literature and then innovation literature and studies that did in the past, particularly I'm talking about the function of innovation published in 2007, and many we also look through the other literature focusing on the innovation system and measuring the innovation. We find out that there is a highly focused on for example, on knowledge of the development of this innovation, how is the diffuse, and the guidelines for research resources, and then activities and market formation. You can see it in here in the bottom of my slides that I listed them. So basically, they brought in a 7 key function, and we realized that this is what something is here is missing. And this is mostly on behavior and social perspective that is missing through these basically functions. What we did, we tried to come up to look through the low energy demand in innovation and try to come up with the distinct characteristics that they have. All of them, and we find and categorize them in 3 main categories as adopters or agent of the change, services, and technology. I will go open each of them. Talking about the adopters and agent of the change, completely opposite of the suppliers, we have variety of the adopters or agents. I mean, we have a different households with a different characteristic, different households characteristic, or basically a choice of the mobility. I mean, just name it. We have a heterogeneity a lot in a demand side. In this perspective, the peer effects and social norms playing a very important role to adopting the new technology or changing the behavior. And here the meaning and value is very important as a core, because when something is become a value for that society and has a meaning for them, they trying to change, and there's a lot of literature on meaning and value on energy consumptions. Last but not least is ability to overcome traditional market failure and shift incentives to the low energy demand. The great example of that, or the one example would be, is the landlord-tenant energy efficiency problem. When you are not the owner of the house, you cannot change a lot, or vice versa. When you have lots of tenants, it would be difficult to try to apply or adopt a new technology and energy efficient basically strategies. The second point is on the services. In here we have multiple attributes and new services. There's a variety of services that we can make it available in a different perspective for our audience and for our basically society. And here we are mostly focusing on non-financial attributes and social acceptance. So this is something we went beyond the monetary perspective and coming from more for motivational and internal perspective. And this actually brings a non-financial policy mechanism. Last point in a services is rebound effect. There is also the huge study on the rebound effect, but still is a lack of knowledge about that. It shows that when people adopt the new or efficient technology, but also there is a tendency of the increasing the energy through that system. For example, a lot has in installing a solar PV that brings the green electricity, but also meanwhile, when we are checking, they have a increase in their energy consumption because they are thinking that this is clean, so it doesn't matter. But this is something that also should be checked. Last point that we find, or last important point or distinct characteristic that we found in innovations is a technology. Particularly, I'm talking about small granule scale that Charlie Wilson also published a paper on that these kind of small size granule technologies also brings a cascading change in energy demand. And this is also very much links to the circular economy and role of the business models and etc. Because these are new things, new technology also will impact on the economy circulations. The next point is on the network effect and the local system integrations that, for example, in a technology adoption, network plays a very important role. When we have a kind of a neighborhood that they can support you in investing on renewable energy, that will influence on your decisions. The other point is on high technology, based on basically on assessment, particular IEA assessment shows that this type of technology, basically demand side technology, low demand side technology, has a high technological readiness levels, and this is a very important point that the studies shows that. And in general, talking about the digitalization, that this type of important role of the general purposes of the technologies is like a scope of the digitalization and machine learning in low energy demand services, that they also played an important, or as a characteristic of the led innovation. In this study, actually, I should also mention that this is in progress study, so is a fundamental things that we are trying to do in innovations. But so I really try to summarize the important points. In this study, we focused on 3 case studies, but here I will bring two important ones. One of them, first, let me say about that, what I mean about the innovation. Innovation in low energy demand, what we meant here is any efforts to improve the level of the structure of the energy demand, including technology or services, or either you will bring the service to the society or a technology, and low energy technology or efficient technology. So 2 great examples of that, it would be installing the solar PV, so to be a prosumer. So mostly I'm talking about the residential sector. And the other one is the sharing mobility. As in a transport sector, sharing mobility brings a new service, new way of the service to lowering our energy demand. In a literature, we will see that there is for example, I'm talking about the solar PV. When this technology invented, it takes a long time that the people start to adopting that. However, it was possible to accelerate this adoption and this adoption of this technology, and also similar for sharing mobility. Usually, when some innovation comes, it takes time that you can. That people start to adopting that or changing their behavior. And that's why we try to look through all these things in detail to find out what kind of strategy that we can bring to accelerate this process, and also how we can scale it up to the larger scale, because usually this kind of innovations is very localized. And I mean, of course, particularly I'm talking about this sharing mobility starts with a very small in one municipality or one city, and we don't have any large scale sharing mobility like a country-based or regional-based services. How we can do this to the higher level. Same as the solar PVs, that there's lots of barriers that would be like a national kind of strategy or kind of movement to starting to installing the solar PVs. And there's lots of barriers, for example, from the incomes, from the awareness of the people, that also in previous presentations, they perfectly approach all these elements. So in summary, I just want to say, when we look through this, for example, in case of the sharing mobility, what we do need to invest or work on it to make it accelerate this transition or accelerate this shift to the sharing mobility, and how we can scale it up to the larger scale. The important point in a sharing mobility is in infrastructure design and use. I mean, basically, mostly in infrastructure design. I mean, even as studies show that the people willing to change their choices or their behavior, but there is no enough infrastructure on that. So we should really invest on our infrastructure and make it more easy to accessible for everyone. And of course, as also it was in the previous studies, that we should bring from the behavior and lifestyle change, and this could go through the education and in bringing the information, how much these changes could influence on general in reducing greenhouse gas emission and in total in your basically health and well-being. These kind of enabling basically variables could push people to change their behavior and lifestyle. The important point, and another important point is a peer effect and the cultural change. I mean, when the people feel more secure, feel more motivated, I mean, because they are learning from each other, that would also helps a lot. Also, some studies shows that empowering local initiatives, something that maybe we shouldn't wait for a very something from top down to start a large scale, but we can start from bottom up approaches and push that forward. Changes, urban design and urban planning also is another point to give this possibility. Another important point is the institutional regulation, of course, and bringing different facilities to by providing this that would be kind of agree in different scale of the different scale from the local to the national. The last but not least is the policy packages. The policy packages are very important. We shouldn't think about a one particular study or more but top-down studies, but we do need a kind of combination of the policies, starting from
1 minute, please.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm at the end. So it's a combination of these different policies, starting from the bottom up, like bringing more knowledge and information to the society. For example, that could be a different instrument, like an encouraging instrument, also, or be giving them more awards on that. These are things that is more psychological incentives, but this really has an impact. And then next to the hard policies like taxation or collective investment options that give to the people that could come and motivate them to invest in such these things. I will stop here. I have more slides, but I will stop here because these would be the same one, but in a different context. Thank you so much. And
okay.
Questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Leila. An interesting presentation on how to bring innovation to low energy demand. So is there any question from part of the audience or any question from any other of the speakers today? Let's see. No questions? Okay, there's a question from Suran Chatterjee in the chat. He's asking about the characteristics that you presented here may seem very global, probably focused on the Western part of the world, let's say. So do you think that these characteristics maybe extrapolate into a global environment, let's say, or can they be applied to a global South, for example, as well?
Very, very good question, Suran. Thanks a lot. This is very important, and I missed to say it in my presentation. Of course, this is very context-based, and for example, the case study that we brought is very much biased to global north, because we believe that, as I show, that reducing energy demand, it's very different from the global south and global north. In global north, we really do need to cut a greenhouse gas emission, while in global south, because we should reach to the decent living standard, because people need still to get energy access. Many of them even don't have the access to the normal electricity or something. So we are predicting the increase in global south. And then the strategy there would be that bringing new kind of renewable energy to have a basically cutting the greenhouse gas emission. Of course, this characteristic that we mentioned is really biased to the global north, but in our project, we are trying to also bring some examples from global north and compare them and come up with the one, actually the aim is that have a really big kind of fundamental structure that's showing that how this characteristic could apply in different cases, but one would be a core. It's a very good question, thanks.
Okay, it's true. Very good question, Suran. So a very good answer, of course. So thank you very much, Leila. I think that it's time for going on with the last of our speakers. It's time for Nout Loomans, that comes from the Technical University of Eindhoven in the Netherlands. And he's going to talk about understanding tipping points and feedback loops in energy transition pathways. So, Naud, are you over there? So the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Carlos.
We don't see your screen. Okay, now we see
Yes,
you.
I'm sharing it right now.
Okay, perfect.
Is everything visible?
I think that it's better if you make it a bit bigger.
I think, oh wait, but then
You're working with
1 second.
PowerPoint.
Yes, but then I need to share a different one, right? Wait.
In full screen mode, maybe.
Does this work?
That's perfect. Okay, so the floor is yours.
Thanks. Well, thank you, and hi everybody. I'm Nout. I will slightly change from the original subject because my research has changed. I will tell you all about it, but now the focus on tipping points is a bit advanced to how that is implemented in local energy system decision support tools. First, to quickly describe myself, as said, indeed, I study in the Netherlands, working in a multidisciplinary project. So I was very interested in all these previous presentations, and we also always try to combine the more social research on innovation and adoption in renewable energy technologies and more technological research. I myself, I'm working mainly in agent-based energy transition models, looking at tipping points and transition pathways, and seeing how this can be embedded in a local energy system context. So all these key topics I've kind of connected in my presentation today. And I said the original focus was on these tipping points, tipping dynamics. But as the research progressed, we got more into contact with local policymakers, and we saw how they were affected with these transition dynamics. And we were working on decision support tools in how these policymakers can navigate these dynamics. So what was the problem we started with? We see the energy transition, I think it's now more of it in its implementation phase. Renewables are growing very rapidly. And with this implementation phase, we also need something, some new things in research and modeling. And it's much more about how can we implement renewables into this local energy system context than looking at these large scale, big visions of what a good system in 2050 or something would look like, or at least that's what we are focusing on. So in embedding this in a local system context, we are really looking from the transition perspective, transitions in the social technical system. So it's not just the technical system itself, but it's also the societal factors, the regulations and law which are around the technical system, and the social factors, so how people interact with it, what their attitude is towards vehicles or electricity or whatever, and the current infrastructure which is in place. So these are all things which are in innovation sciences generally seen as things that kind of hinder the transition. There's a sort of inertia in this old system which slows down the adoption and diffusion of all these renewable energy technologies. But now, actually, in some more recent literature, people see actually from these same transition processes, you can also look at it in different ways. And so the social technical factors can also lead to positive tipping points. So at one point there's this inertia slowing it down, but if you can find a certain trigger, triggering yourself into a self-reinforcing feedback loop, you can accelerate system change very rapidly. Amongst others, Lenton and Farmer are doing very important work in this area. And I myself, we try to work on with this and looking at these positive tipping points, trying to identify them, and then also trying to see if we can model them and see what the effect of these tipping points is on energy transition pathways. So the first thing we did was starting with identifying these tipping dynamics. And I think so a lot of things are like you see in this list are also were also reflected in the previous presentations. I've seen network effects as well. So many people, like if many people in a specific neighborhood have PV, more and more people are also inclined to join that. Furthermore, there's of course techno-economic returns to scale, returns to adoption. So yeah, it's easier to, or the economies will start better if more and more are produced and those systems can cooperate. Then there's changes in laws and regulations. So more and more we see it happening right now. Laws are adapted to this new environment in which a lot of electricity is generated by maybe decentralized sources. And yeah, at least in the Netherlands, the current energy law is now being adapted to that and making sharing of electricity, for example, more accessible and more, yeah, working it out. And lastly, there's also these systemic tipping points. I think they're a very interesting part of transitions. And that's...
Sorry, I think that we cannot hear you. I don't know if I'm the only one that cannot hear you.
Yeah, no,
Now
I
I
can't
cannot
hear him either.
Okay. So I think that we have some problems with the sound. Let's see if Naut is able to correct those problems. We can see the mouse moving around the presentation, but we cannot see you and we cannot hear you.
Yeah, so his video is frozen for me.
Oh. Well, I saw the pointer of the mouse moving around just some seconds ago, but so let's wait for him just to say, no, I can see it. We cannot hear you. So let's wait a bit.
Hello?
The thing is that we cannot hear him. So Severin, I don't know how to proceed in that case.
Can you hear me right now?
Okay, we can
we
hear you and listen to you. Okay, go on.
Yes, I'm very sorry. I had to log in again.
Okay, don't worry.
Okay, let's see where I was. Yeah, so I finished off, I think, with the codynamics. So that's how multiple parts of the energy transition can kind of accelerate and evolve together into a better system. One example is how sustainable mobility can improve sustainable electricity, and in that way, both the electricity and the mobility transition kind of accelerate each other. But from this point on, when we were identifying all those tipping points, we started talking to provincial and municipal policymakers. And so those people were very interested in it. And they had the feeling they were kind of in the middle of this and navigating these transition dynamics. So at that point, we kind of, our goals switched a bit. In the Netherlands, all these provincial and municipal policymakers, they are working on sustainable sustainability strategies for their areas, trying to improve the sustainable heating, sustainable electricity generation within their area. And they have a couple of challenges. So they wanted to enable these tipping points. They were very afraid of devising up policies where they could get into negative lock-ins. And they had a lot of uncertainty, actually, uncertainty on multi-levels. So they had uncertainty from bottom-up adoption, but also from top-down dynamics. And the solution we came up was to create a decision support tool, which would help these policy makers. And it has two initial goals. The first one was to let these policymakers learn about these tipping points and also the trade-offs by playing with local energy system configurations. So they can they have I will show it in a demo a little later on. They can find out themselves what kind of technologies for what households and demand and kind of things, what works best, what enables a trigger point, and what results into a lock-in, what are the costs, etc. And then learn about the system effects on a bit higher level. And as said, yeah, this project was in partner with a province in the Netherlands, the grid operator, and the municipalities, and they are now right in the middle of actually implementing all these renewable energy strategies. And the key issues we identified with them is actually also this multi-scale system dependencies. So on one hand, the policymakers, they were faced with the bottom of the up dynamics. So there's a lot of adoption of PV, of EV, insulation and batteries, with all these different socioeconomic factors. And as just seen in the previous presentations, it's very hard to predict who will adopt what at what point in time. It's not rational or whatever. And on the other hand, there are these top-down dynamics. So they were planning district heating while having to deal with an uncertain demand, and as there's adoption of insulation, as there's adoption of heat pumps, etc. So they were kind of stuck within their policies. And another very big thing in the Netherlands at the moment is a bottleneck, which is grid congestion mainly. So we've had a lot of electrification and a lot of PV in the built environment, which is leading to grid congestion and which is really hindering the implementation of renewable energy strategies. So in making up their renewable energy strategies, they also had to navigate the grid congestion issues. So what we did in this decision support tool, we showed these multi-scale dependencies. On one hand, we created a neighborhood level tool and really focus on household heterogeneity, so the differences between all those households and how they could or would adopt different renewable energy technologies, the low voltage grids, and also some flexibility options, as they were really important in reducing this grid congestion. And on the other hand, we also focused on the province level to see the effects if policymakers were implementing kind of policies on this neighborhood level, how would that work out in a more systemic context? So on the high voltage grid, would there still be grid congestion or not? In a bigger scale, are you managing your heat sources well? And still focusing on the heterogeneity between the households and the neighborhoods as well. And lastly, because now we were really into collaborating with policymakers and really making something actually for the policymakers, we focus on interactivity and making it as useful for the policymakers themselves. So yeah, we have embedded in an online tool. We're still working on it, and we're also doing user tests with different kind of policymakers and grid operators to see if they can work with this tool and if they can learn something from it. The current status is actually we're still finishing the model development, so results are only very preliminary, and we're still validating it and, as said, working on the user tests. Now I have a short demo of the two models. I hope I have introduced them well enough. So I will quickly take you through them to kind of see what I've been talking about and what our research is all about. So this is a demo of the neighborhood level model. We have included 3 neighborhoods which are substantially different. in terms of building, in terms of social demographics and grids. One is in a village, the other two are in cities, and one has a district heating grid and the others not. And what the policymakers or the end users now can do is they get an overview of their neighborhood. They see all the individual buildings, and they can kind of play around with the settings of this neighborhood, and then they can assess which settings work best. So you see, you have multiple kinds of output. You see hourly demand, energy demand based of gas and electricity. And later on, you can also calculate annual outputs to really see which system is working. In this short clip, I'm now clicking at different settings. I've now improved the insulation level of the household, and I'm now changing the settings of heat systems to kind of configure a well-functioning heating system. And these green rounds are the transformers, the low voltage transformers in the neighborhood. And whenever they get a different color, that means they're overloaded. So that's really one of the top priorities here, to reduce the amount of overload time of these transformers. And I'm now showing you a scenario with a lot of heat pumps. So the peak electricity demand rises a lot, and you see a lot more of these red dots. Also having a division between heat and electricity, and now including some sustainable heat sources as well. And it's embedded more in the tool in which the policymakers are kind of challenged to configure certain scenarios and to work with them and see what are the actual implications of these scenarios. And whenever you've set the scenario, you can also calculate the final results and the costs over a year, as I said before. So now I will now do it here. It takes a couple of seconds. And then you get it on average per household, and the more of the societal costs. So this gives policymakers a very, very good overview of what their options are in their sustainability strategies, what the differences are between the different households in their region, how much it will cost them, what the implications are in terms of emissions and in terms of grid congestions. Now I focused on a single household, and you see the demand is a bit different there. I think for sake of time, I will quickly go to the next slide, because as I said, what was very important for these policymakers was to also be able to see how this system work more in a systemic, bigger regional context. What they often envision is that they have a lot of within their neighborhoods, they have created a well-working system.
Please, 1 minute.
Okay, then I will need to hurry. But they have created a very well-working system, but that doesn't fit within the more regional context. Because if for example, a lot of neighboring neighborhoods all get a much larger electricity demand, you still have on the high voltage grid, you still have congestion problems. Unfortunately, I cannot go into details with that, but with this model, these policymakers can figure out like how does our neighborhood strategy fit in a more regional system context in terms of energy resources and demand. Then I will finalize with some preliminary modeling results and conclusions. So I said,
see your screen. We cannot see your screen right now.
You cannot see it.
No,
I'm having quite some issues. Let me see. Let's try for the third time.
I have been told one trick is to share your whole screen instead of just the window where you are presenting. Maybe that's.
Oh, yes. Does this work?
Okay. Yeah,
Yes,
this works.
Okay, we're back at it. Yeah. So some of the preliminary model results is what's really important is that not one solution electrifying your heat or doing just district heating or whatever is like the optimal or perfect solution. It really depends on the local context, but also on the aligning with each other, with the neighboring districts, for example. In all scenarios, grid congestion really remains a big problem in the Netherlands. So there's really a lot of focus on introducing these flexibility demands or flexibility solutions. And also one of the results is that insulation is always a very good solution, but has some rebound effect. So if you do too much, people might indeed in the end use more energy. And it's really, really important for policymakers to focus on both the lower level, look at what happens in the individual houses, and the higher level, look what happens in the more regional context. Then the final conclusions is, in terms of model, these are kind of a bit of the same conclusions. In terms of how this model is being used, I think what's really nice is that policymakers really see a great value in such decision support tools, and said I'm using it with a lot of local policymakers and doing user tests. They have a lot of questions on what can be added and what can be how we can change things or how we can make it clearer to really make it workable for them, because they're not always experts. So it really has to be started from the kind of basic knowledge, but in that it helps in enriching their system understanding so that they can make more informed choices in their sustainability strategies. That was it. I'm sorry for all the inconveniences, but thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to the questions.
Okay, don't worry. Nice presentation and nice models. They look very promising. I'm curious because I have a couple of questions, but you have to answer them a bit fast because we are a bit out of time. The first of them is at the first you were talking about the identification of tipping dynamics, and you said that there were social, techno-economics, institutional, systemic. How did you do that identification? This would be my first question. And the second question would be, how have you implemented those models? What have you used? Which kind of software? Or which kind of... Yeah.
To answer the first question, that's literature review. So we've looked at all the context of mainly from the transitions literature, but it's now being enriched from complexity sciences and from also a lot of actually the terminology around tipping points often comes from either ecology or the climate models, and that's kind of, I think those three areas are now more and more being merged and being connected, and in various papers they identify different terms around tipping points and different so they identify different tipping points. I thought in our work we've said these are, looking at these papers, what we think the most, let's say, essential or key dynamics.
Okay. I think that this part is more or less understood.
And the last part, sorry, I have to hurry up. The last part is software called AnyLogic, and it's a Java-based software platform which enables easy agent-based modeling. Actually,
so could you repeat again?
It's called AnyLogic.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and so it's easy agent-based agent-based and Java-based modeling, which includes spatial dynamics and temporal dynamics and stuff like that. So that makes it nice for making these kind of support tools.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other question from part of the audience? I think that there has been people that has had to leave, but I think that they will contact you after this presentation because they have been quite interested with your work.
Yes.
Is there any other question for Naut? Any question in the chat? Any question orally? Nope. So, well, I think that it's time for the general questions. Is there any general question for any of the, well, we have here, maybe it will add some value getting the climate science fact right. The role, I mean, I don't know what's this. Medani, if you want to give a bit of light of what you are trying to say in the chat. Nope. Okay, please.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
No, actually, it's not a question. Just I had a book on climate science, and that was just the link of the book.
This is a bit of publicity here.
Yeah, kind of publicity. But anyway, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So, any other question related for Node? No. So, okay, so I think that we are going to conclude this session. We have seen 4 presentations in which we have seen the assessment of what type of person has been affected by the change of tariff in Spain. We have seen also another presentation in which we have reviewed the reasons for people to behave as they behave in energy transitions using the Delphi method, in which we have seen a series of archetypes of behavior that has been created. In our third presentation, we have seen how to bring innovation for low energy demand. And we have explored 3 categories of innovations. And in the last presentation, we have seen how to implement renewables in, let's say, tipping points in energy transition in an embedding in local context, let's say. Okay, so since there's no questions, I think that it's time for closing this session. Thank you very much for your attendance, and you are welcome for the rest of the conference. So thank you very much.
Thanks. This is just a reminder. At 4 we will have the poster session. So please do attend that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So bye bye.